What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about Cornerstone running back rankings and tiers. But before we get into the video, make sure you have joined our Discord. We are giving away a free signed NFL jersey mystery box. All you have to do to participate is be subscribed to this YouTube channel, join our Discord, and once you're in there, you will have access to a giveaway channel, and all you do is click participate. You have about a month left before we give away the jersey, so there still is time to join, but make sure you go do that because this might be the only chance you get at a free signed NFL jersey. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into this video. And I said Cornerstone running backs, and hear me out. As I was building this list, I was looking at it, and really Cornerstone pieces are not running backs for the most part. When I say a Cornerstone piece, I want a player that can be rostered in a rebuild, somebody that can be rostered in a competitive window. These are the centerpieces of your teams, of your builds. And I'm not going to lie, your running backs are not those players. Now, there's a couple guys that I would actually consider a cornerstone. It's just very few. Now, we're going to talk top 15, so we'll talk about those guys. But keep in mind, if you are rebuilding, running back should be the last piece of your roster that you are going to figure out. And with all of that being said, and the disclaimers for the running back position, let's hop right into these cornerstone pieces. Now, the criteria for these running back cornerstone pieces is 24 years of age or younger. So the first player I want to talk about, and the only player in my superstars tier, is going to be Bijan Robinson. And I know he hasn't played a down of football yet. I've heard it. People are I can already see you guys going to the comment section and saying, why is Bijan number one in a superstar tier? Guys, he's a generational prospect. He was drafted top 10. He's going to a team that loves to run the football. They're going to utilize him in the passing game. And at the end of the day, he has no injury concerns because he hasn't been injured yet. And that is just kind of what this running back position is. No injuries, high usage, and top draft capital, like very, very top draft capital. So for that, Bijan Robinson is in a superstar tier. And again, the talent speaks for itself. He's a man amongst boys when he was playing at Texas. And I think he's going to be a man amongst boys at the NFL level as well. So still to be seen, but to me, he is a superstar and he is the most valuable running back and a true cornerstone piece to your rosters. Now let's go down a tier. We're going to be in the elite RB1s, and I have 3 players in this category. And I do think that all of these guys can be cornerstone pieces, true cornerstone pieces to your roster. And those are going to be Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't have to spend a ton of time on these guys, but let's start with Breece Hall. He was a phenomenal prospect coming out of Iowa. He had a great rookie season, and then obviously he tore the ACL. I think if he hadn't had torn that ACL, I would have him in the superstar tier as well as Bijan Robinson. But because of the injury, I am going to keep him here for now. I think he might have a little bit of a slow start here in 2023. And for running backs, the windows are so short anyways that any wasted time is a little bit of a ding on their value because we know that the windows aren't very long for running backs. Now, with that being said, the Jets do have a good offensive line. They have improved with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. I think there's going to be more touchdown opportunities this year than there have been in previous years. And so I think that Breece Hall, when he gets healthy, when he's back to 100%, he's going to be superstar level for your team. He's going to be fantastic. And I wouldn't be surprised that once he gets a little bit healthier and we see that come back, he goes right back up to that superstar tier with Bijan Robinson. So that makes me shift my focus over to Jonathan Taylor. He's the second player in this tier. Jonathan Taylor, obviously the oldest of this group. He is 24 years old right now. So I said that these players were 24 years or younger. He is right on the fringe of that. So he is almost a little bit more towards a win now piece, but he's young enough and he hasn't really had enough injuries for me to be super scared. He had an ankle and stuff here and there, but at the end of the day, there have been no major injuries. So Jonathan Taylor is going to be in this elite RB1 category. I'm still comfortable building around him. The addition of Anthony Richardson kind of brings a tiny bit of a question mark because we know that Anthony Richardson can run the football. How does a running quarterback affect Jonathan Taylor? Does that help him in the running game or does that hurt him in the running game? If I had to make a choice, I would probably say it probably hurts him a tiny bit more in the running game than it does help him. Is Anthony Richardson going to check down? I don't know. How do the reception numbers look? But at the end of the day, Jonathan Taylor is that talented that I cannot move him any lower. This is about as low as I can get him. So Jonathan Taylor, he's going to be RB3 and he's going to be in this elite RB1 tier for me here for Cornerstone rankings. And then my last player is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously drafted 12th overall by the Detroit Lions in this year's draft. He has a very, very good pass catching resume. He's athletic. And at the end of the day, he's going to fall right into that DeAndre Swift role. And he should be a very efficient running back for fantasy football right away. The Detroit Lions have one of the best lines in football. He's going to be running behind that. I think they're going to use him in the passing game. They're going to use him in between the tackles. And he's going to be a very versatile weapon for the Detroit Lions. I know, again, he's a rookie. We haven't seen him play, but I do think elite RB1 is where he should be right now. This is the type of talent that Jahmyr Gibbs is, and I am more than comfortable building around him as a cornerstone piece in my Dynasty Fantasy Football rosters, and that's why he is going to round out this elite RB1 category. Now let's move down to my low-end RB1s. ones, it's going to be Kenneth Walker and Travis Etienne. And the thing about these guys is there's questions about how many opportunities they're going to get. Obviously, in fantasy football, we want our running backs to get as much of the opportunities as possible, but it looks like both of these teams have added backs in this year's draft, and it looks like they don't necessarily want to give the entire workload to either of these backs. So let's start with Kenneth Walker. They obviously add Zach Charbonnet in the draft. Kenneth Walker doesn't have very good pass catching chops. He hasn't shown it at the NFL level or really at the college level at all. And so I think that Zach Charbonnet is going to come in. He's going to take a lot of the receptions out of the backfield. There is possibly potential that Zach Charbonnet also takes some goal line work. So because of that, I had to move him down into this low end RB1 tier. I think the ceiling is obviously going to be capped with Kenneth Walker, but I think the floor is still fairly high. He's a very efficient runner. He's super talented. The Seahawks run the football enough that I feel comfortable with Kenneth Walker as a running back one on my roster. I just think he doesn't have that top 5 ceiling that we wanted out of him anymore now that they've added Zach Charbonnet. And the same thing can kind of be said for Travis Etienne. Obviously, the Jaguars have added Tank Bigsby, and Bigsby is kind of an all-around back. He can be utilized as a pass catcher. He can be utilized between the tackles, outside of the tackles, on the goal line. There's a lot of things that Tank Bigsby does well, but Travis Etienne is a very talented, efficient runner as well. We haven't seen him utilized in the passing game as much as we would have hoped coming out of Clemson, but at the end of the day, he's talented enough, first-round draft capital, and he's playing with Trevor Lawrence. I do think that the floor for Travis Etienne is a low-end RB1, but again, he has a capped ceiling because of Tank Bigsby, and I just don't see him finishing as a top 5 running back in fantasy football. So as we move down these tiers, you see we're going to have talented running backs with concerns, and there's obviously going to be a theme here, right? All of these guys have major injury concerns, and some of them have gotten a little bit clearer as of lately, but there still are major injury concerns. None of these guys have been able to stay healthy at the NFL level. All of them have had durability concerns. Obviously, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, and J.K. Dobbins are the guys that I'm talking about here. Javonte, obviously with an ACL tear, PCL tear, multiple ligaments, like it is bad for Javonte Williams. It's the same injury, actually, ironically, as J.K. Dobbins had in this same tier, but I think Javonte Williams, obviously he's going to start slow. I'm not even going to say there's a chance. He is going to start slow this year. There are injury concerns there. We haven't seen him get a full workload here at the NFL level yet. I obviously think Javonte Williams is super, super talented. I had him over Najee Harris in my pre-draft rankings. He was my RB1 in the class, guys. Like, I think he is that talented of a running back. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he hasn't gotten the workload. I think hopefully with Sean Payton, we could see a little bit of that Kamara usage come down for Javonte Williams, but at the end of the day, there are enough concerns there. And obviously this year, there's going to be some injury concerns as well, where I don't feel super comfortable putting him in that low-end RB1 category. Now, the same can be said for DeAndre Swift. Obviously, he hasn't been able to stay healthy when he was with the Detroit Lions. Now he plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. We know that Jalen Hurts doesn't necessarily check down the football. We saw that a lot last year with Miles Sanders. Is DeAndre Swift going to be able to hold up when running between the tackles? It's still to be seen. When he was given a high workload in Detroit, he did obviously get injured. I would like to see him stay healthy because he is super talented. Again, he's one of these really talented running backs that just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Is the opportunity in Philly going to be enough? I'm not sure. So because of that, I do think that he should stay in this talented with concerns. He can't go to the low-end RB1 category either. And then last but not least, J.K. Dobbins. Obviously, he is now a year removed from that multi-ligament tear. And so because of that, I think he has the least amount of injury concerns in this tier, but still there should be durability concerns nonetheless because of that type of damage that he took to his knee. And again, you put him in an offense with the quarterback that is known to run the football, not necessarily known to check down. They don't have a history of checking down to the running back. There's not going to be a lot of receptions. Now, he is super, super efficient on the ground. You know, in the past, he's been running for 5 or 6 yards per carry, which is very good for the running back position. Is there going to be opportunities for him to get carries on the goal line? Sure. I just don't know what this offense is going to look like with the new OC there. And hopefully there's more opportunities for J.K. Dobbins to catch the ball out of the backfield. And then, of course, we need to see him fully healthy for the first time in a while. So I do think that J.K. Dobbins probably has the highest possibility of going into that next tier of all of these guys this year, but I'm obviously not comfortable enough with him. So for now, he's going to stay in this tier where it's talented players with concerns. Now we have 2 more tiers. This tier that I'm going to talk about is going to be the biggest tier, and it is going to be short-term starters. And this tier is going to consist of Dameon Pierce, Rachaad White, Cam Akers, and Isaiah Pacheco. Dameon Pierce for the Houston Texans, obviously a 4th-round pick just a year before. He looked decent last year for the Houston Texans, but 900 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 30 receptions in 13 games. I just don't think that Dameon Dameon Pierce is a super talented running back. I don't think he's anybody that is going to be a world beater at the position. I just think that he is a very above average running back. And I know that that's going to probably offend a lot of these Dameon Pierce truthers, because when we find guys like this, we tend to fall in love, a la the Phillip Lindsay, the James Robinsons, and all of these guys before. And now I'm not saying that Dameon Pierce is those guys, but the history speaks for itself. When you're not super invested as far as draft capital goes to a running back, they tend to not give you as long of a leash. They also tend to just not keep you and value you as much as these guys that are drafted ahead of them. So I don't want to wish this upon Dameon Pierce, but it's always going to be in the realm of possibilities for me and always going to be in the back of my mind. And so for that reason, I think he's a low-end starter. You're probably going to get a 2-year window out of him. Let's hope he stays healthy through that window. And then from there on, I don't know if he's going to be the starting running back for many NFL teams after that. Which then takes me to Rachaad White. And the same thing can kind of be said about Rachaad White. He's a 3rd-round draft pick, which is obviously a lot better than that 4th round. We want to see the day 2 draft capital instead of the day 3. But the difference is that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are probably going to be a bad football team. Now, obviously, we can't tell the future, but you lose Tom Brady and you go to Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, and I have to see some type of reduction in the efficiency of the offense. Now, the good thing about Rachaad White is that he is very good in the pass catching game. He's probably going to see a lot of receptions. Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask can probably check down the football enough that he's going to score fantasy points through the air. Last year, as a rookie in a split backfield with Leonard Fournette, he saw 50 receptions. So I would not be shocked if he gets the full workload this year to see him go for 80 receptions or more, which is going to obviously be very solid for fantasy football. The problem with Rachaad White is he isn't very efficient on the ground. Last year, he ran for about 3.7 yards per carry, which is pretty average for the NFL. He's not very efficient in between the tackles. Now, the offensive line was a little banged up. This year, it should be a little bit better, but I just don't know how many opportunities he's going to get as far as goal line opportunities are going to go. And then obviously, he hasn't been very efficient through the tackles. So the majority of his value to me is going to be in that passing game, and I hope that we see it. But for me, I think this is just a short-term starter with Rachaad White. I don't see him being a franchise running back for any team moving forward. So now let's move on to Cam Akers. Cam Akers, obviously for the Los Angeles Rams, had the best draft capital of any of these guys in this group, but Cam Akers had the Achilles injury, which we know is a running back killer. Most of the guys who have ever got this have not been able to survive long-term after that Achilles, but Cam Akers kind of looks like an outlier, but the data isn't very good against him, so we'll see how that progresses moving forward. It does seem like the Los Angeles Rams are willing to give Cam Akers a majority of the workload this offseason. Of the players in this tier, they're obviously going to play for a team that probably is in the upper half. I expect the Rams to be better than the Buccaneers, and I expect them to be better than the Texans. The offensive line isn't very good, but they should score enough that there should be some opportunities for Cam Akers on the goal line. And for what it's worth, last year coming off of an Achilles tear, he was more efficient than guys like Rachaad White. If Cam Akers can put it together, if he looks a little bit healthier, I do think that there is a chance for him to go for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And if he does that, you're going to be very happy with Cam Akers on your fantasy football teams. But I still think that the ceiling is capped enough that you should not be looking at him as a piece that you build around long term. But he is a guy that is young enough and has enough upside that I feel comfortable with him as a short-term starter and probably a running back too on my fantasy football rosters. And then the last player in this tier is going to be Isaiah Pacheco for the Kansas City Chiefs, a 7th-round pick, so the worst draft capital of all the guys in this tier. However, he's going to play on the best offense. We saw Isaiah Pacheco last year, really good between the tackles, and quite honestly, as the season went on, he just ran the hell out of the football. 4.8 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns, and 830 rushing yards. But the thing about Isaiah Pacheco is he is not used in the passing game at all, and they did re-sign Jerick McKinnon, so Jerick McKinnon is going to come in and take that pass-catching role back again. So I do not expect Isaiah Pacheco to get really any of the passing work at all. Last year, only 13 receptions, which is terrible for fantasy football. However, with as many scoring opportunities as there will be for the Kansas City Chiefs, I do think that Isaiah Pacheco should be considered a lock for 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns, assuming they don't add any of these free agent running backs. And he is definitely somebody that you can plug in as an RB2 and feel somewhat comfortable with that every week in your lineup. Now, the upside is going to be capped because he's not going to get a lot of the receiving work, and he's obviously not going to be the center of this offense because Patrick Mahomes is just going to throw the football, right? So with that being said, we do need to temper expectations for Isaiah Pacheco, but he definitely deserves to be on this list. He is a short-term starter that I feel comfortable plugging into my lineup for the next couple seasons. Now move down to my last and final tier. These are going to be your efficient running backs that are probably going to be in a committee, and this consists of James Cook and Devon Achane. Now, James Cook was highly efficient for the Buffalo Bills last year. He didn't get a ton of usage, but he was averaging 5.7 yards per carry, which is really good and something we obviously want to see out of James Cook. He has big play ability, but one thing that we didn't see out of James Cook, which I thought was going to be the bread and butter at the NFL level, is James Cook in the passing game. And last year, obviously, Josh Allen being a rushing quarterback and not a guy who really checks down, James Cook only has 21 receptions for 180 yards. Now, I think from a yards per carry standpoint, James Cook is going to be very efficient. The problem is they go and they get Damian Harris. He's probably going to be the running back that they're utilizing in the red zone. He's also going to be a running back that they probably use between the tackles. So that leaves the question mark of where is James Cook's role? Is it going to be that pass catching role and a change of pace back? I'm not sure. And if it is, that's not very valuable for fantasy football. So I do want to see James Cook take that step forward, make himself more involved in the running game. And if he does those things, we know he's efficient with each carry. So maybe there could be some fantasy football points there. But for the most part, I think he's just a committee back and he's very efficient with them. It's just how many opportunities is he going to get? It's probably not going to be a ton and not a lot that you can rely on. So the ceiling is probably going to be very inconsistent and it's probably capped because he's not going to get utilized a ton. And then last but not least, Devon Achane, obviously a third-round pick for the Miami Dolphins this year. There have been rumors of Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara and all of these guys being associated with the Dolphins. So that does scare me a tiny bit. But with that being said, they did take a third-round pick and they used it on Devon Achane. So I think that he's going to be utilized regardless. We obviously hope that nobody goes there because if somebody goes there, it's going to take opportunities from Achane. But for now, we have to project it as it is. And Achane looks to be in the mix as a committee running back, maybe the 1A, maybe the 1A, maybe the 1B. You know, it's to be seen. But he has the talent and he's good enough and he's efficient enough with each carry that he's going to be very good in this offense. Mike McDaniel, obviously coming from a Kyle Shanahan system where they use multiple running backs, but they have that West Coast zone scheme, which quite honestly is where Devon Achane is going to excel. He has track speed. And when I say that, I'm not joking. He's literally a track star. Like this guy has superstar speed. He's going to be able to beat you to the edge. He's a big play threat waiting to happen. And he's good enough in the pass catching game that you're going to get points out of him through receptions and receiving yards. Now, the Dolphins should be a good team in real life, so there should be goal line opportunities. I don't know if Devon Achane is going to get that. My guess is it's probably going to go to a guy like Jeff Wilson or maybe even a Raheem Mostert. But if he sees a couple of those, who knows where the potential is there. I think the majority of his fantasy football points are going to come through the highly efficient carries and the big plays that he's going to provide for you and some of the stuff in the receiving game. So because of those things, I think he's going to be in this efficient committee running back category, and that is going to round out my top 15 Cornerstone running backs. Now, as we close this video, I do want to remind you guys that only about 4 of these guys I would consider true Cornerstone pieces that I would hold in a rebuild. That is going to be Bijan, Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Everybody else, there's enough question marks, and the running back position is so fragile and so volatile that I really couldn't hold on to them if I'm a rebuilding roster. But those 4 guys I would make an exception for. With that being said, I have nothing else for you guys today. Make sure you go join the Discord, enter to win that free signed NFL jersey mystery box. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel because by doing so, you help us reach a wider audience, and we want to help more people win fantasy football championships, and we can only do that if we reach more people. So thank you guys for tuning in today. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. I will see you guys on the next video. Peace out.